Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com. I got my goat painted. The cat is still not painted. That's going to come next. If you missed the others videos, he'll be sitting right here loving up the goat. Since I started this, I got a cold, so if I sounded a little weird, that's why. The painting of the goat was actually really easy. In fact, it was so easy I almost feel like I was cheating. I used layers, basically, using glazes. So there was the only detailing that actually went on the goat was for the eyes. Everything else was just done with a big brush and layers of glazes, and it came out really nice. There's a really fine texture on the goat that I put in when I was using the epoxy clay. That's what this is made out of, and I just kind of pressed something into it. It was a little white thing. It looked kind of like a sponge, and you're supposed to use it in the bathroom to keep your soap from getting all soggy. And so I retrieved it from the bathroom and I cut a little piece off and I just pressed it against the damp, uncured epoxy clay. And so there's a really fine detailing throughout the goat. It's not realistic in any way, wasn't intended to be, but it gave it just enough of a texture that the glazing really brought it out. And I made sure that there were no brush strokes at all to compete with that texture, so it just really worked out nicely, I think. And before I show you how I did this, I want to mention that this goat took me so darn long that I am totally convinced that the next project is going to be a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. I have one in mind. I'm not going to tell you about it until I know for sure it works, because I kept telling you about this one and then starting over. So anyway, let me show you how this was painted. Like I said, I almost feel like I was cheating because it was so easy. Hopefully the cat will also be easy, but he's got some stripes on him, so that might be a little more tricky. So anyway, let me show you how this was done. I started out by covering the entire sculpture with Liquitex acrylic gesso. I didn't think that the homemade glue-based gesso would work just because the epoxy clay is a form of plastic. I just didn't think that the homemade gesso would stick to it. It might chip off later. Then I covered that with a yellow base just so I would have something underneath my first brown glaze. Then I mixed some matte acrylic paint with just a little bit of golden acrylic glazing liquid. The glazing liquid will slow down the drying time just enough so that you can blend in areas, and I used this big wide flat brush that I found at Walmart. It looks like it would just, because it's so big, that it would just glob on some paint, but it actually was designed so that you can put on a really thin layer of paint. It works absolutely wonderful for varnishes, and I decided I've fallen in love with it. So I used it to dab the paint on in a very thin layer so that some of that yellow is still coming through and there's no brush marks. My model for my goat is a Boer goat from Winterset Farms. You can find that at wintersetfarms.com, and her name is Eclipse. I really like that soft, lighter color on the front of her muzzle, so in order to do that, I dry brushed some matte acrylic varnish over just that portion of her nose. I also tried mixing that same color with a little bit of the golden liquid glazing liquid and adding that to the ears, which are just a little bit lighter than the rest of the face. I decided I really didn't like it, so I went back over it with some watered down matte paint, just brushed it on, but I went over it with a paper towel and pulled most of it off. For some reason it just didn't work very well with the glazing liquid. And I really don't understand why, but the lighter area around her eye just never worked, and so it ended up being covered. I mixed some burnt umber in with the golden acrylic glazing liquid and covered the entire piece, except for the horns, of course. And this really drew it together, and it added just a little bit of interest to that brown. Adding glazes, especially when you have all one color, it really helps to make something a little bit more interesting. The pigment tends to kind of fall into the cracks in the that really light texture, kind of bringing them out. So I really liked that. It also helped to bring out the creases around the nose and the mouth. I gave the horns 2 coats of ivory matte acrylic varnish. And now I'm going to take her into the living room. I'm going to sit on my chair right in front of the computer so that I can paint those eyes. They've got really weird eyes and I don't want to mess it up when I'm trying to do it here. It just is, it's too hard to reach everything and get it right. So I'm just going to sit her on my lap and I'm going to finish those eyes. I'll be right back. I went ahead and painted the eyes. I discovered when I started doing my research that goat eyes come in a lot of different colors, almost white, really light blue, almost this brown color, orange. So I just picked one, and I happen to like the yellow, and it'll go really nicely with the cat. So that's what I decided to use. I also darkened the nose while I was at it, and darkened the rim around the eye using a dark glaze, using the black and burnt umber. Then just washed it off again, so I didn't have to paint that in by hand. So now that this painting is all done, I'm just going to give it maybe 3 or 4 layers of this ultra matte varnish just to protect her really nicely, and then I'll start working on the cat. So that's it for today. I am going to work on that new project, that easy, faster one, but like I said, I'm not going to tell you about it yet, so stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to my channel to make sure that you don't miss anything, and come on over to Ultimate Paper Mache and say hi. I'll see you there.